Hare Krishna. Welcome, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're back here celebrating this beautiful book, The Bond of Love. And by now, most of y'all have the book. But if you don't, we're going to request our dear Shamasaki Devi to please put a link to Amazon where you can get this beautiful book, which has offerings and sharings and reflections by over 300 disciples of Śrīla Prabhupāda. They have poured their heart, sharing their interactions with Śrīla Prabhupāda. So this is something that you want to really have and cherish. It's my great honor today to welcome Her Grace Nirakula Prabhu. Jai. Thank you so much for joining us, Nirakula Prabhu. It's
Nice to be
such
here.
an honor to have you here.
It's my honor.
Jai. Nirakula Prabhu is a very senior devotee. She was initiated in the year 1973. And to many, she does not need an introduction. But for my own purification, I want to say a few things about Nirakula Prabhu. Nirakula Prabhu, from your biodata, I'm finding out that you had actually co-authored the beautiful book, Higher Taste, with one of your dear friends, Bhadra Devi,
Yeah.
who served as a pujari in LA Temple. And living in Northern California, I'm seeing the love and affection that pours through you. And you're nourishing the hearts of so many devotees, along with Vaisesika Prabhu. You've transformed the lives of so many devotees and helped them practice Krishna consciousness in so many deeper ways. So it's such an honor to have you here. And I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Govinda Priya Prabhu. I'm delighted to be here, and it's my honor to be with you and with all of the Vaishnavis and Vaishnavas that are attending this program for the Bond of Love.
It's truly the bond of love that is connecting us all. And, we see Śrīla Prabhupāda through your writings, through this beautiful book. I'm learning about Śrīla Prabhupāda in so many different ways that it's deeply, deeply touched my heart. And I'm sure it's touching the hearts of many, many. I wanted to know, Nirakula Prabhu, just to start our conversation here. I know you were raised in Brooklyn. Tell us a little bit about you meeting the devotees and deciding that Krishna consciousness is what I want to do. And Krishna consciousness is where I want to spend the rest of my life.
Thank you, Govinda Priya. Before I start to talk, so that I might be able to share things that will touch the devotees' hearts and glorify my Guru Maharaj, I'd like to first offer my obeisances to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pucharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarane. Vancha Kalpa Turubjascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
So, I was raised in Brooklyn, and it was you want me to talk a little bit about
Yes, anything. Please talk about. We want to know about you. We want to know how you met the devotees. We want to hear a little bit about you.
Okay. In terms that we use today, I grew up in a dysfunctional household. And so I left home at the age of 16 and drove across the country with 4 other. They say, you know about that. And so we came out to California because it was the thing for young hippies to do, was to come out to San Francisco, which we did. And we went at one point we went to a rainbow gathering in Colorado, and the devotees were there doing kirtan and distributing prasadam. And I didn't learn any philosophy or things like that, but I heard the chanting and I probably had some prasada. And then for some reason, we drove back to New York for a visit. And at that time, we visited the Brooklyn Temple. And I remember we were with, I was with my friend Jagarini, and we were both married at the time. And we weren't initiated, obviously, yet. And we all visited the temple, and they immediately wanted to shave the boys up and, have us move in. And Jagarini already had a young son. So we didn't do that. We came back out to California. And, we were kind of searching. And actually, I should say looking, because searching kind of means, to me, very intensely. But it was something we did all the time. But to get what we received is just pure mercy. So Satsvarup Maharaj was in the Santa Cruz. We moved from San Francisco to the Santa Cruz Mountains. We were living in an abandoned cabin.
Wow.
With no running water, an outhouse. We used to go to a neighbor's house for showers, and we had a fire stove to cook on. And we saw at the co-op in Santa Cruz that Satsvarup Maharaj was giving programs at a local person's home. So we went there, and then we just kept going to, he was doing college programs and things like that. And so at one point, he was with Bhakta John, who became Bhakta Tirtha Maharaj, and Sahadev, and they were traveling. And at one point, he asked us to visit Los Angeles. So we piled into a van, and he drove us down to New Dwarka, and we never left. If I remember correctly, we got there, and within a short amount of time, that night we went out on Harinam. They didn't have all the temple apartments that they have now. So again, we were put into a house that was an abandoned, or it was about to be torn down to be made way for new apartment buildings. So we were put up there until they were able to close the deal on the next apartment building they were, and then we moved into the temple. And that was in February of 1973. It was a real whirlwind.
That's far out from one apartment to that's a little bit of a let's see. Okay. Let me mute you. Okay, I think it's a little better, and then we'll switch between our mics. Yeah, beautiful. I mean, amazing, quite far out story from one abandoned house to another abandoned house to actually.
Excuse me, Satsvarup Maharaj, they brought 6 of us down to LA, and 5 of us stayed and got initiated. Wow. So yeah, it was an exciting time. It really was. I'm always indebted to Satsvarup Maharaj and Bhakti Tirtha Swami and Sahadev Prabhu.
Wow, yeah, that is amazing. So in 1973, you got initiated in LA.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
So was that the first time you saw Śrīla Prabhupāda?
Yes. And you read in the book, and you've heard the stories of the excitement of the build of Śrīla Prabhupāda coming, and just like everywhere else, we were up the night before. I remember the Vyasasana was being reupholstered. Just so many things were going on. It was the old temple room, and so the new temple room wasn't built yet, and so that was called the annex, I think. Anyway, yeah, so it was very, very exciting, the build up to having Śrīla Prabhupāda come, and he came I was initiated on May 15th, and he had been there for a short amount of time before that. And then ours was the last initiation he did before he left. And I didn't know this for years, but it was actually Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day. And so, and I see that others were also initiated on Lord Nrsingadev's appearance days in other years. So, but I don't know how, it was such a time of just being swept up and so much that I didn't know, and so it wasn't until not too long ago that I found out it was actually Nrsinga Chaturdasi.
Wow. So I'm visualizing these young girls, moved across the country from Brooklyn into LA and into this foreign place, and with, like you were mentioning, they were ready to shave the boys up and just get them in. It seems like it was all just prepared and planned in such a way. And then you come to see Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Yeah.
How did it feel? How did you feel in the presence of Śrīla Prabhupāda?
How did I feel in the presence of Śrīla Prabhupāda? Well, I felt a lot of awe and reverence. I felt respect. And, being raised Catholic, I used to go to my grandparents' home every weekend. And my grandmother had these books all about the saints. And I used to love reading about the saints. But I had never met one. I met religious and, kind and spiritual people, but never what I would consider a saint. In fact, when I was in 8th grade, so I was about 13, the nuns who taught us in Catholic school, they got a new convent. And so I was helping them to move in from their old convent into the new. And I was downstairs in kind of like their community room, the common room. And I saw boxes with liquor in it. And I was just like, I guess I was pretty naive. It never dawned on me that the sisters would drink. But it made an impression on me, not a good one. And so, it was at that time that I was starting to ask questions that weren't being answered to my full satisfaction in regards to Catholicism. Because at one point I actually thought, I might like to be a teaching nun, like that. But then the questions weren't being answered. And so that's when I turned to Eastern philosophies. So getting back to that, there was something about being in Śrīla Prabhupāda's presence that you just knew. There weren't words spoken. It was just a heart-to-heart connection. First time I saw Śrīla Prabhupāda was it was on that visit back to Brooklyn, and we were watching a news program, and they showed the devotees greeting Śrīla Prabhupāda at the airport. And in my mind, it's a black and white, which is quite possible back then in the early, it would have been 1972, the end of 1972. And so when I looked at him, he's walking through, and to me, it didn't look like his feet were touching the ground. And I wasn't high on anything. I mean, like, I was blown away. I didn't even know who this was. And then come to find out it was Śrīla Prabhupāda. And so, what I'd like to say too is what I didn't feel in Prabhupada's presence. I didn't feel that what he was doing for his own benefit, for his own glorification, for him to become famous, for him to collect properties and wealth, that what he was doing was purely selfless service in the service of his Guru Maharaj.
Wow.
I mean, you really did get that from him. So it was a combination of both things, what I felt and what I didn't feel, that really, solidified the beginning of that bond.
Wow. That's beautiful, really. when you were mentioning that, I was saying Śrīla Prabhupada act literally walking off the ground. I've heard that from so many other devotees mention that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because still you think, but others experienced that also. In fact, I think it's Moksha Lakshmi in the book says how she was scrubbing the floor with scrubbing powder in Śrīla Prabhupada's quarters in Vrindavan. And, she walked out and left these little white footprints. And she had to leave the bathroom because Śrīla Prabhupada wanted to use it. And when he came out, he didn't leave those footprints. So I thought, okay.
It's a fact that he's actually, when we say walking the planet, he really wasn't walking the planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's beautiful. It's such a beautiful reflection. I can totally, just by listening to you and hearing you, we have a glimpse of that when our Guru Maharajas come, the excitement,
Mm-hmm.
the love and the want to be. And at that point, I can imagine what devotees must be feeling when Śrīla Prabhupada when you were in the presence of Śrīla Prabhupada. What about Śrīla Prabhupada, completely convinced you that this is it? I'm going to dedicate my life. I'm going to surrender. This is my spiritual master.
Part of it was I was just swept up. I was really just swept up in the wave. And, when you're 17, how much can you really grasp about I'm dedicating my life to this? I did understand when I took the vows that this was for life. But, it's a 17-year-old's understanding of that, So what's helped me to continue to feel that dedication and shelter is the association of the devotees, the Sangha, the deepening of my faith in ways that I experience practically daily from, stories of the other devotees, from witnessing the trials and tribulations that the movement has gone through since Śrīla Prabhupada left. The 80s were a really, really tough time in ISKCON, in Krishna consciousness. And, I really am so grateful to so many of the devotees that in spite of everything that was going on, they just persevered. They just put their head down and kept doing their service, and held it all together until we kind of, came back. And it's common that that's what happens when the spiritual master leaves, when the acharya leaves. At the most, there were devotees in their early 30s. We didn't really have elders. Śrīla Prabhupada was our elder. Leela Shakti, my god sister who has passed away, her mother, Rose, who just recently passed away, she became a disciple of Giriraj Maharaj in the last couple of years. She started an organization called Friends of Lord Krishna, Folk. And she was, and thankfully she was in the LA area. And so we could, take advantage of her motherly love and affection and wisdom. And she was also very helpful in explaining to a lot of the parents, no, this is okay. Helping. She was the bridge, And so I got off track there, but it's these kind of. There comes a point where you don't have a choice, and you're not doing it because you don't have a choice and it's begrudgingly. It's because you're trying to repay a debt. You're trying to show your love. You're receiving so much that what can you do but try to give back? And in my case, it always falls short, but it always gives me a goal, something to strive for. And so that's why I'm still, here trying to somehow or other follow the order and instructions of my Guru Maharaj, make him proud, and not make it so he has to feel like, so he has to come back again. He said we could do it in this life, and the way things are going, Kali Yuga is progressing so quickly right in front of our eyes. I'd like to do that. I'd like to go be with Śrīla Prabhupāda and serve with him personally.
I'm sure you do. I was just reflecting in your point that you made that you like to hear the stories of the saints, and you hadn't met one. And I was just thinking to myself at that moment that I've met you. You're living with this saint, and so many wonderful saints. This book is full of these saints that we're meeting.
Yeah,
we're so grateful.
It's
Grateful
true.
for the sacrifices that you all have made. And the way you're representing Śrīla Prabhupada is just deepening my love and affection, and my awe and reverence for Śrīla Prabhupada too. Nirakula Prabhu, share some memory of Śrīla Prabhupada that you have. Anything that comes to your mind at this point. Anything.
Yeah, I've thought about this, and there's a couple that came to my mind that I'd like to share. The first one was I received first initiation, as I mentioned, with Śrīla Prabhupada there. In Los Angeles, and so they called me up and asked me the regulative principles, and I said that, and that I would chant 16 rounds. And then I want to get this exactly right, what Śrīla Prabhupada said. He said, akula means to become confused. And at that moment, I could literally feel my mind and brain bouncing around in my head. And then he said, and Nira means not. He said, your name means one who doesn't become confused, fixed up. And all the devotees started laughing. And then I was, but when he said akula, I mean, it was just, he had so much power over me. And I enjoyed that, and then later on, again, much later, I found out that it was a name for Srimati Radharani, and it also one way that it's described is one without anxiety. And I felt like, looking back on it, I feel like that was a blessing from Śrīla Prabhupada, without anxiety, because my early childhood into my teens, into my early 20s was a life of a lot of anxiety. It was very stressful. I was a very nervous type. It affected my health, circumstances I couldn't control. And then, I just stuck with the process. I just held on to Śrīla Prabhupada's lotus feet and didn't give up. And now, the anxiety that I have is related to service, and it's a good anxiety. We were talking about that earlier. We need that anxiety in service. So you read about the gopis and Mother Yasoda, they all have anxiety in their service. So that's a good thing.
Wow.
And then the other memory that I have, again, was in Los Angeles. Śrīla Prabhupada came back later in the year, and it was December, and he was there for some time, and he gave, it's kind of a famous lecture, or there were a lot of famous points in it. It was on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an amazing lecture. Now, during the time, even when Śrīla Prabhupada was there, I was in the kitchen because it was my job to set up the deities, my service. By this time I had gotten Brahmin initiation too. So it was my service to set up the deity's plates. And also when Śrīla Prabhupāda was there, I would set up his plates for him. So I was in the kitchen at that time listening to class. And Prabhupada told so many of the things that we now know about, but being a new devotee and there was no Leela Amrita, I didn't know. So he talked about how he went and visited his Guru Maharaj, at the behest of his friends who, I think he said they dragged him there. And he had seen so many sadhus in his young life. His father would always invite them and he wasn't impressed. And I could relate to that. It's going back to what I said, being brought up in a kind of a religious community in Catholicism. I didn't see the saintliness. And so he talked about that. He talked about the instruction that he got from his Guru Maharaj, and that he said, you are English speaking, you're intelligent, you should preach in English. He mentioned that he had gone to a palmist, and the palmist said that your hand says your orders will be carried out. And so, he just, all these like little personal things. He talked about how his business failed, and it was just a mesmerizing, and of course there was philosophy in there too, but it just really, there wasn't a sound in the kitchen. Everybody was just glued with their ears to what Śrīla Prabhupāda was saying. And then I wanted to read this part. He talked about that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had come to him to take sannyas, and that he was horrified that he'd have to give up his family. And this made Srila Prabhupada a person to me, that it wasn't robotic what he was doing, that he had a business that failed. He had a family that he, said that he was horrified he'd have to give them up. It just really personalized it for me that, Prabhupada, went through struggles to get here and who he is. And then he says he's talking about his Guru Maharaj, it was by his grace I was forced to give up my family life and so-called family business. And he brought me some way or other in preaching his gospel. So this is a memorable day. What he desired, I am trying little bit, and you are all helping me. So I have to thank you more. You are actually representative of my Guru Maharaj. And Prabhupada started to cry. And not, I wasn't in the room, but devotees told me the tears shot out of his eyes. Because you are helping me in executing the order of my Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much. And then, he ended the class and left. And we were just like all puddles. Prabhupada thanking us with such emotion and showing his love for his Guru Maharaj is something that has really, who he had very little association with, a letter, listening in a couple of classes. He had very little personal association. And that's what's really helped carry me through a lot of all these years since Śrīla Prabhupāda left in 1977. It's hard to imagine. I was 22 when Śrīla Prabhupāda left. And through his mercy, I'm somehow or other still here. But that was, I recommend that if you haven't heard that lecture before, it was December 13th, 1973. The audio is on the database.
Maybe I should, we can put it down. December 13th, 1976.
73.
1973.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's disappearance day. It's just a really moving and personal and intimate lecture.
Yeah, I've heard that. And when I hear Prabhupada crying, he's literally, you can hear him crying.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your sharing, Nirakula Prabhu. It's really, when you said it really personalizes Srila Prabhupada, we can see him as a person. We can see he did it. He did everything possibly he could do to please his Guru Maharaj. And it's possible for us to do that with his blessings and his mercy.
Yeah.
And the very fact that Srila Prabhupada was so grateful for all the support the young boys and girls were offering to him, it makes me reflect on how important gratitude is. How important gratitude is in Krishna consciousness. I was just carrying this thought a little forward and thinking, what are some things that you feel very deeply grateful to Srila Prabhupada for? I'm sure there's a lot of things, but anything that you want to mention that you feel very deeply grateful to Śrīla Prabhupāda for?
This is, I'll start with this, but my whole life is a manifestation of Srila Prabhupada's grace and mercy. I don't even know if I would be alive in this body if it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada. And so I'm grateful for that. But I'm grateful for my God brothers and God sisters.
I want to interrupt you for one quick second. We have a little comment from Manjuwali Devi. And she says, thank you for your beautiful stories. I remember when you came to LA, you were a shining light full of devotional enthusiasm. And here's your dear friend, Manjuwali. Please.
I was going, Manjuwali, my respectful obeisances, my heartfelt love. I think of you all the time, and I'm so grateful for your message. Thank you. I was just saying, that's who Manjuwali was the temple president's wife when I moved to LA. She was the head pujari. She taught me so much, and not just in, our service, but in how to behave. She was a young girl herself. She was maybe 22, 24, something like that. And she had so much responsibility, and she handled it with such grace. And I had a tumultuous life, in my first years of Krishna consciousness. And I would, go to Manjuwali, and she would listen to me, and she would talk to me, and she would engage me. She would answer my questions. I remember one time I was in the kitchen, and I wasn't initiated yet, and I was making up the offering plate, and in the old temple room, the deity room was right off of the kitchen. And I had heard something or read something, and I was concerned, and I asked her, I said, I'm not initiated yet. Does that mean that Srila Prabhupada and Krishna aren't accepting my service? And she immediately answered me back and said, no, your service is accepted. She completely alleviated all my anxiety, as she always did and still does. Again, she is a saint, and just being in her presence is so comforting to me, and I strive to this day to walk in her footsteps. She's just amazing. So thank you.
Your grateful heart is just pouring so much.
Well, I have so much to be grateful for. All the service, I was thinking about this, all the service I've ever gotten, whether it was directly, to serve Srila Prabhupada, or my pujari service, or working at the BBT, or co-authoring the recipes in the book. That was Bhadra's mercy on me. She and I had a catering business together. She could have done that easily without me, but she brought me in. She gave me that service. Just so many things. One time, Upendra, who had been Śrīla Prabhupāda's servant, and his wife Chitralekha, they invited us over to their home for prasadam. Very, very sweet, very kind devotees. And they made, I remember two things they made. They probably made more than this, but I remember two things. They made a fresh tomato soup. And for dessert, we had papayas that the seeds had been taken out and berries had been put in and whipped cream on top. And I just thought, wow, that was so opulent. It was so lovely. So the next time Śrīla Prabhupāda came, I decided I would make that for him as an afternoon snack. So I made the tomato soup just as I got the recipe and from Upendra Prabhu, and I made the papaya. And but I wasn't actually, to be honest, I wasn't sending it up for Śrīla Prabhupada. I didn't feel qualified to cook for Śrīla Prabhupada. But Satsvarup Maharaj was traveling with Prabhupada at the time, and Shrutakirti was his servant. And previously when they had come, Shrutakirti was very generous in giving out service and giving out maha and things like that. And I had been a recipient of that. So I wanted to do something for both of them who I felt indebted to. So I sent up the soup and the papaya fruit to each of them. And Satsvarup Maharaj gave his to Śrīla Prabhupada, I found out. So that was the only time that I know of that I actually made a prep and cooked for Śrīla Prabhupada, aside from setting up his plate. So here I was trying to repay a little bit to Satsvarup Maharaj, and he was making me more indebted because of that. And so
that's like an achintya bheda tattva. You're
Yeah.
trying to repay debt, and you become more indebted by repaying
become
debt.
Become more in debt. Yeah.
And that's such a wonderful point you brought out there in terms of, when you try to be the servant of the servant, your service is accepted. Such a beautiful point and point of reflection you brought out there. Thank you so much. Yeah. Wow.
Well, and other things, I would, Kanka, who my god sister, she was in LA, and when Prabhupada came, she used to do his laundry, and then she had a baby and she couldn't do it, and so she gave that service to me. So that's what I mean, like any little thing I've gotten, even my marriage to Vaisesika Prabhu, that was arranged by God brothers. So everything I have is, just the mercy of my God family, who I see as Śrīla Prabhupada's instruments.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. You're an ocean of gratitude is what we all are feeling, and we're having these comments coming up that devotees are feeling so touched by your sharing and by your grateful heart. We have someone saying, it's so encouraging to hear and feel the love for Śrīla Prabhupada this great devotee has. So some of the devotees, they're just tuning in and finding themselves connecting to Śrīla Prabhupada through your grace. So thank you so much for this beautiful sharing. I'm thinking that, how important Śrīla Prabhupada said being grateful is, and you're just exemplifying that. And I'm learning so much from just your talk here, and just the way you pour love and affection to so many devotees that you're nourishing in Silicon Valley and so many other places. Devotees are touched by your care, your love and affection. I'm thinking, what instruction would you give to the next generation? Do you see that it's important for us to develop a personal relationship with Śrīla Prabhupada? Do you see any instruction that you would like to give us? Any suggestion, any guidance that you would like to share with us?
Well, not so much and instruction. And I'm grateful for what you just said. And if the devotees are feeling this connection, it's all Śrīla Prabhupāda's mercy. It's just, if I can share some of that, it's just his mercy. But for the generations to come, it is important to develop a personal relationship with Śrīla Prabhupada. And it's possible. And many of you have. And so what I would suggest is, of course, reading Śrīla Prabhupāda's books. His spiritual ecstasies are in those purports. And they just get deeper and deeper the more we read them, the more we hear them, the more we share with each other, like-minded devotees, and share those realizations together. So that's definitely something. But listening to his lectures, I listen to Śrīla Prabhupada every day, and I kind of crave his voice. And, because I've seen him in person and because I've watched a lot of videos, I can imagine the facial expressions and the movements of his hands. But not just his classes, but, his morning walks and his room conversations, things like that. They give a different aspect of Śrīla Prabhupada. And so I think those are a couple of things that are important. But I think the most important thing is, or very, very important, is do something to make you feel part of the mission. When you feel a part of the mission, you have goals, you're excited, you're challenged, and you all have talents. Amazing talents and intelligence. Use those abilities. And nowadays it seems to me easier for the women to, plug into places where they can use their talents and abilities, whether it's raising your children, homeschooling your children, cooking, preaching, blogging, teaching so many things, pujari service. While this is going on, my dear god sister Sangeeta is putting on a Vaishnava's Care seminar today and tomorrow to learn how to take care of the devotees, as they near the end. There's lots of service. Find your passion and use it in Krishna's service, in your guru's service, in Śrīla Prabhupāda's service, and it's exciting. That's what will nourish you and nourish others. And I see it. I am so encouraged and inspired and enlivened by the next generations. You're also talented and so intelligent and so dedicated to your gurus. It inspires me. You have taste. You have taste for all things Krishna conscious, for learning, for understanding, for preaching. Get involved in outreach, because that's the way to fan the spark within yourself and fan the spark within others. And when you do that, then your connection for Śrīla Prabhupada is, he's your grandfather. And we've heard that, right? That Śrīla Prabhupada said the grandfather is even more affectionate than the father. So those are just a few thoughts, and I'm sure you all have more that you could share with me.
It's beautiful.
But it's important to feel a part of the mission. That's what, when we found out that ISKCON of Silicon Valley, the initials are ISV, the voluntary service, it's voluntary, and it's Prabhupada said that we always needed a fresh challenge. So if we do that for each other, and if we support each other as women, in the material world, there can be so much envy, and we're working on that within ourselves as well. But if we throw that away and support each other and bask in the glory of another's success, and move our god sisters and our nieces and all forward. This movement will take over the world. There's no doubt. And the women are a very important part of it, because we have an outlook of a mother, and we see things differently. When I read the stories in the Bond of Love, what I realized is the women didn't have like a kind of a corporate ladder, so to speak, to climb. They weren't trying to get to be sannyas. They weren't trying to get to be temple president. It wasn't on the radar. So, back then we were just serving out of service, and so that's our blessing, that it's not so much about position. It doesn't have to be about position. It's just service for service. And so if we encourage that and support each other in those in that way, while at the same time having our voices heard by those in power and those who can make the changes, it's really important. It's really important. And Śrīla Prabhupāda, I believe he knew that.
Yeah. Such a wonderful point you made, that, to be connected, do something to feel a part of the movement. What a wonderful reflection. To actively do something to feel a part of the movement. Wow, that's very deep and profound realization that you have. And I've seen over the years how you have dedicated your life, assisting and just being a part and serving and serving and serving, and an inspiration for so many. It's amazing, very, very inspirational. It's when we see examples like yourself and so many other wonderful devotees, it gives us this insight that yes, this is the path, and we're seeing such fine examples of dedication and service, lifetime of service. 1973, I was not even born, So lifetime of service and dedication. I was going to request you to share a couple more pastimes or anything that comes to your mind about Śrīla Prabhupada for us today. And we'll request any of our live viewers, if you have any questions or anything that you want to get answered from Nirakula Prabhu, please post them here right now.
Well, some things that, as I said, all of my life is just Śrīla Prabhupāda's grace and mercy. And but some simple things like in LA in the early 70s, at least, we would go to the flower market. That was one of my services. I'd go to the flower market. You go at like 3:30 in the morning and get the flowers for the deities, garlands and vases and all. And we did that Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we would make fresh vases on those days. And when Śrīla Prabhupāda was in, and they would match whatever the deities were going to wear, the colors like that. And when Śrīla Prabhupāda was in town, the flowers that were on the altar would then go up and be put in vases throughout his quarters. And one time when he came back from his walk, he asked about why the flowers had been changed. And, they just gave the answer that, well, the fresh flowers came up from what was on the altar. And Śrīla Prabhupāda said, it's not necessary to change them. They were still good. And I realized that just because you have Lakshmi and you're using it in Krishna's service, you still should be careful. You should still not waste it. And so that really was a simple instruction that stuck with me. And Dina Dayadri, was God's sister who lived. She lived right below Manjuali, or right next door to Manjuali, and she was married at the time. And I remember she had sent Śrīla Prabhupāda a letter and an offering, a donation probably, in an envelope. And she had written A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami on the front of the envelope. And when Śrīla Prabhupada wrote back to her, he just put "from" on the front of the envelope. And then and again, he was careful, and he was, using Krishna's energy. And so simple little things like that. Actually, once came to the my apartment. I was living in it was an apartment building, that they had just bought not too long ago. And Prabhupada was taking a tour of the buildings, and we were in a 2-bedroom apartment. I lived with Jagarini and her husband, and myself, and my husband at the time lived in one of the rooms. And so it was a 2-bedroom, and Prabhupada was literally walking down the block, and they're saying, "Prabhupada's coming to your house." So we kept it really clean. And thankfully, we slept on sleeping bags. So they were rolled up and put in the closets, and we didn't have any furniture. I think we had a rocking chair and an altar. And Śrīla Prabhupada came in, and he walked into the bedrooms and, looked at everything, and came out and commented how nice and clean it was. And I remember Tirtharthi, we had a silver goblet that was for the deities, and he thought, and he got some juice for Śrīla Prabhupada, so he gave Śrīla Prabhupada some juice while he was there, and then Śrīla Prabhupada left and went out to continue his tour. But that was pretty amazing.
Like the highlight.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we have some questions here, and they're asking if, wow, I just become so emotional hearing your wonderful realizations and reflections. So there's a lot of comments, and a lot of devotees have felt touched by your sharing and realizations. Some devotees are asking about how you came to Krishna consciousness, and I think you did mention something in the beginning of the interview, and we request devotees to hear the recording if they missed it. A really fun story of 4 young, was it yourself, Jagrini Prabhu, and who else was in the car that drove to?
Oh, that drove across country?
Mm-hmm.
It was Jagarini and Tirtharthi, myself, and Brahmarupa, and a friend named Patty.
Wow.
Yeah. We drove across country in a 1955 Mercury.
Across the country, looking for something, and Śrīla Prabhupada found you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's when reading the Bond of Love, I realized a lot of us had similars, experiences. We were all reading the same books, trying to, find God and find a guru. Be Here Now, Siddhartha, Autobiography of a Yogi. I remember reading an Autobiography of a Yogi that his guru lived, I believe, in the Himalayas and lived on air. And I thought, no, that's not me. So when coming to Krishna consciousness, and, as we say, it's a kitchen religion, and, that we can cook, and we can honor prasadam, and, all in the service of Guru and Krishna. It's, it doesn't get better than this.
It doesn't.
It does not.
Did you ever notice? Let me turn this. Did you notice Śrīla Prabhupada, change his instructions based on time, place, and circumstance or his suggestions or anything?
The fact that he, as a sannyasi, came to the United States, and used everything in Krishna's service, which, in the 1960s in India, it was a big deal. But he was following in the footsteps of his Guru Maharaj, who, drove in the car or wore leather shoes or, things like that. And then Śrīla Prabhupāda, engaging the women was time, place, and circumstance. In America, a lot of the women were the head pujaris. That changed in India, especially, like in Vrindavan, but even in India, in Calcutta and in Bombay, the women were on the altar and doing pujari service. So, Śrīla Prabhupāda engaged us according to our propensity. And I think this was Vishaka mentioned about protection. And that's protection, giving us service that we can do in Krishna consciousness, in the movement. That's what saves us. We have a saying here, your seva will save you. And it's what better protection is there than that? And so, to engage the women according to their propensities, and now we're seeing the women in so many different, roles. And, I hope that we all feel, and they all feel, that whatever it is, they can do it. They can do it. They can start a school. They can, be a head pujari. They can be a temple president. They can be a preacher, and they can be a guru.
And they can be engaged to any capacity.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember we were having a phone conversation and we were talking about the morning walk. You want to share a little bit about the morning walk?
The morning walk?
When Śrīla Prabhupada went on the morning walk and some of the men were actually complaining.
Oh, yes, yeah. I've watched all the previous interviews, so I'm not sure who mentioned it, but they said that, Śrīla Prabhupada had been out in Calcutta doing the morning walk, and a brahmachari had been complaining about the women, and it was close quarters there in Calcutta, from what I understand, and it was difficult, walking through each other's spaces and things like that. And the first time I heard that story was from Madhavananda on his memories of Śrīla Prabhupada. So it came from a man who was there on the walk. And he said, they were kind of bashing the women and, as was typical in those days. And when they got back to the temple and the women opened the door, and they had been back there, cleaning the temple, cleaning Prabhupada's quarters, cooking the breakfast, bathing and dressing the deities, doing all that seva. And Śrīla Prabhupada said, but if you associate with these women, you will go back home, back to Godhead. Just completely like,
isn't that amazing?
Yeah, take it off the bodily concept. That's what Śrīla Prabhupada did. There's so many stories in the book here of Śrīla Prabhupada taking it off the bodily concept,
Yeah. Kaushalya Prabhu, in her reflection in the book, she writes that in the presence of Śrīla Prabhupada, I did not feel I was a man or a woman. I only felt that I was a servant of Śrīla Prabhupada.
And so many devotees talk about the glance of Śrīla Prabhupada, and he didn't see you on that body. He saw who you were. And I had one experience like that when Prabhupada came to the new temple, and we were up in the balcony, and Śrīla Prabhupada came in and he walked around and he paid his obeisances to the deities, and then he kind of did a full circle before going to his Vyasa-san, and he looked up at us up at the in the balcony, and it was I saw it later, much later on the video, and it was a glance, quick glance, maybe a second or two, but it didn't feel like that. He connected with all of us up there just by that glance, and that's what it was. It was soul to soul. That's what Śrīla Prabhupāda saw, and that's how he engaged us.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You know, just hearing you, I feel that soul to soul connection. And I'm sure so many others, we're having comments pouring in, and so many devotees tuning in live, hearing us having this conversation, feel that their faith and their love and their appreciation for Śrīla Prabhupada has grown through this conversation. So we're so very grateful to you, Nirakula Prabhu, for being willing to share Śrīla Prabhupada with us in the form of his memories.
I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I really enjoyed preparing for this, and I've so enjoyed reading the book. Please, you will get so much out of this book, The Bond of Love. It's amazing, and I'm hoping we can even get more interviews of some of the devotees who aren't in here, and you know, some of these devotees have already left us, and so I really recommend The Bond of Love. It's been a great honor to participate in the book and to be here with all of you this morning. I am very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
The honor is definitely
Thank you for all the service you're doing.
Thank you so much. By seeing inspiring Vaishnavis like yourself and so many of your god sisters, the second generation like us feel so inspired to just dedicate our lives, somehow be connected with Krishna through service. So we're going to take your instruction to heart and find a way to become a part of the movement by doing some service. Thank you so much, Nirakula Prabhu. It was such an honor. It's always an honor. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all our viewers for tuning in, for your comments, for the love and appreciation for Nirakula Prabhu, the service of the ministry. And as Nirakula Prabhu said, I'm just going to reinforce that if you haven't gotten a copy of The Bond of Love, please do that. This book was definitely not meant to make any profit. This is just a sharing of the heart. So please take advantage of, we're hoping we can get volume 2. Like Nirakula Prabhu said that there's so many Vaishnavis that we haven't been able to reach. And there are so many Vaishnavis that are not on this planet now, and we're not going to be able to interview them. We want this to be something here for generations to come, something for generations of Vaishnavis to be able to tune in, to watch, feel inspired, be able to connect with so many wonderful Vaishnavis who have dedicated their life. Thank you so much, Nirakula Prabhu, for your sharing and for your lifetime of devotion.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhupada. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. All glories to his thousands and millions of followers. Hare Krishna.
Jai Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai.